There's a strange heaviness that builds when you start to realize how much of your life is built around things you claim as mine. My room, my job, my time, my future, my body, my identity. Each word feels solid, comforting, like an anchor in a world that keeps shifting. But beneath that comfort lies an invisible tension. The more you claim, the more you fear to lose. The more you own, the more your possessions begin to own you. Imagine this. You wake up one morning and walk through your apartment. Everything around you tells a story of who you think you are. The clothes in your closet whisper of the version of yourself you want others to see. The books on your shelf speak of the person you hope to become. The photos on your wall hold moments you've tried to freeze, people you've tried to keep. You look at it all, and for a moment, there's pride. This is my life. But then, something quieter arises underneath that pride. A question you don't want to hear. What if none of this actually belongs to me? The thought feels absurd at first. Of course it's yours. You paid for it. You built it. You earned it. But then you remember, everything you have, every moment you live, every breath you take, is borrowed. Borrowed from time, from others, from life itself. You came into this world empty-handed, and one day, you will leave the same way. Still, we spend most of our days pretending otherwise. We build our sense of self around ownership, around what we have, what we've done, who we can call ours. Yet, deep down, we sense the fragility of it all. That's why we cling so tightly. Not because things define us, but because we fear who we might be without them. We call it ambition, responsibility, love, but often, it's just fear disguised as meaning. Fear of loss, fear of insignificance, fear of the void that remains when there's nothing left to hold on to. This is the quiet trap of modern life. Every message tells us to accumulate possessions, followers, experiences, to capture, archive, and display them as proof that we're living well. We scroll through images of other people's lives and think, if only I had that, then I'd finally feel complete. But every mine becomes another invisible chain. When we attach our worth to what we own, our success, our relationships, our image, we start to shrink ourselves to fit inside those fragile containers. We confuse having with being. And that's when freedom begins to disappear. You can see it in the way people panic when their phone breaks, or when someone questions their beliefs. You can see it in how heartbreak feels like death, not because love has ended, but because a part of our imagined ownership has been torn away. We say, my partner left me, my friend betrayed me, my youth is gone. Every word reveals the same hidden expectation, that life should belong to us. But it doesn't. It never did. The truth is, everything you claim as mine is just passing through you. Your body changes. Your mind evolves. The people you love drift in and out like seasons. Even your thoughts are not fully yours. They arise, they fade, they move through you like wind through an open window. And yet we resist this truth. Because to live without ownership feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking into endless sky. There's no ground, no solid identity to cling to. Just space, and the vastness of it terrifies us. But what if that space isn't emptiness? What if that space is freedom? What if everything you're afraid to lose was never meant to be kept? What if life's beauty doesn't come from holding on, but from the way it keeps moving, how it gives, takes, and gives again? Look around you. Every single thing that surrounds you once belonged to someone else, or to no one at all. The cup you drink from, the clothes you wear, even the air you breathe. You are part of a cycle of borrowing and returning. The moment you forget that, you begin to suffer. We chase security in an insecure world, but maybe we're searching for peace in the wrong place. Maybe true security isn't found in holding tighter, but in letting things pass through us without fear. Because the truth is, possession is just a story we tell ourselves to feel safe in an unpredictable world. But safety isn't freedom. Control isn't peace. Ownership isn't life, it's the shadow of it. So you keep walking through your apartment, through your life, and you start to notice how heavy everything feels when it's labeled as mine. The weight of maintaining it, protecting it, proving it. You start to realize that your anxiety isn't coming from not having enough, but from trying to keep what was never truly yours to begin with. And in that moment, something quiet inside you begins to loosen. You take a breath and the air feels lighter. You see your possessions, your relationships, your identity, not as anchors, but as waves. Temporary, beautiful, moving. And you whisper to yourself, maybe I don't need to own anything to belong here. Maybe the reason I feel so trapped is because everything I'm trying to hold on to was never mine to begin with. We grow up being told that ownership is power, that the more we have, the more we become. We learn to measure our worth through possessions, achievements, relationships, each one a small fortress built against the uncertainty of life. But beneath that drive to own lies a deeper, quieter hunger, the desire to make life solid, to freeze the flow of time, to stop things from changing. This is where the illusion begins. Ownership seems to promise control, yet it binds us more tightly than anything else. The moment you call something mine, you build a wall around it and yourself. You become its protector, its prisoner. Philosophers and psychologists have wrestled with this illusion for centuries. Nietzsche saw it as the will to power disguised in ordinary life. Our impulse to possess is an attempt to dominate the chaos of existence, to turn the uncontrollable into something manageable. We say, "This is my life," because the alternative, the realization that nothing is truly ours, feels unbearable. Without ownership, the ego fears annihilation. Carl Jung might have said it differently. He would call it an ego attachment, a psychological necessity that eventually becomes a spiritual burden. The ego clings to identity, constantly labeling, my beliefs, my story, my trauma. Each label helps it survive, but at the cost of truth. Because the deeper self, the part Jung called the self, with a capital S, isn't interested in owning. It's interested in becoming. And becoming requires letting go. But that's the paradox. We can't evolve if we're still clutching who we used to be. We can't move freely if we're carrying everything we think we own. In a world obsessed with possession, this idea sounds radical. Everything around us reinforces the belief that ownership equals success. The house you buy, the followers you gain, the body you sculpt, all symbols of control, all fragile. Beneath the surface, there's a quiet anxiety humming inside each achievement. What if I lose it? What if someone takes it? What if I'm nothing without it? That anxiety is the shadow of ownership. The price we pay for the illusion of control. Think about it. Every possession comes with fear. Every attachment hides a subtle grief. The moment you hold something, a part of you begins preparing for the day it slips away. It's not the loss itself that hurts the most. It's the clinging, the resistance to impermanence. This is why Buddhist philosophy speaks not of owning life, but of flowing with it. The Buddha saw that attachment, our desperate need to claim and control, is the root of suffering. To possess something is to resist its nature, because everything by its very essence is temporary. Alan Watts echoed this truth centuries later, saying, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. We spend our lives trying to own what can never be owned: time, love, beauty, even meaning, and in doing so, we forget to live. Imagine trying to hold a river. You can scoop it into your hands, but the tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. That's ownership. The act of clutching the flow of life until all that remains is exhaustion. And yet, we keep trying. We collect things, objects, memories, people, believing they will complete us. But what we're really doing is collecting mirrors. Each thing reflects a part of who we wish we were. Each possession says, "This is me." But identity built on ownership is like a reflection on water. It shatters the moment life ripples. Even our relationships are caught in this web. We use the language of ownership without realizing its weight. My partner, my family, my friends. Love becomes conditional, fragile. Because when we try to own love, it turns into dependency. Real love, as many mystics remind us, isn't about holding. It's about seeing, about allowing another to exist freely beside you. When we start to see how possession seeps into everything, it becomes clear that ownership isn't just about material things. It's psychological, spiritual, existential. We don't only own objects, we try to own outcomes, ideas, even the way others see us. Every time we attach to an image of who we are, we trap ourselves inside it. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But if that why is built on possession, on external validation, it collapses. The moment the thing we depend on disappears, so does our purpose. Freedom, then, cannot coexist with ownership, because freedom demands surrender to impermanence. And yet, the ego resists. It wants permanence in a world that constantly changes. It wants to make the transient eternal. But the harder we fight the flow, the more we suffer. The Stoics understood this too. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In other words, the only thing we truly possess is our perception. Everything else, every external form of ownership, is borrowed. Look closely at the moments you felt most at peace. They rarely come from owning something. They come from being fully present, with nothing to prove, nothing to protect, nothing to lose. That feeling isn't emptiness. It's clarity. Because when you stop trying to possess life, life begins to possess you. You start to see that everything is connected, flowing through you, not belonging to you. The world stops being a collection of objects and starts to feel like a living symphony. But this realization isn't gentle at first. It strips you. It takes away the false layers of identity you've spent years building. You start to see that what you called mine was never truly yours, and what you thought was yours was always shared. Even your thoughts, where do they come from? They arise uninvited, shaped by countless influences, drifting through you like clouds. You don't own them, you witness them. The same is true for emotions, for inspiration, for the body itself. Every breath you take is borrowed. Every moment is a gift that can't be kept. And so the question shifts. The point isn't to give everything away, it's to see ownership for what it is. A story, a temporary agreement between you and the universe. You can use what passes through you, but you can't keep it. You can love deeply, but you can't possess. You can build, but you can't hold forever. In the end, everything returns. Every object decays. Every relationship transforms. Every moment dissolves back into time. And when you resist this truth, you suffer, not because life is cruel, but because you've mistaken a passing wave for solid ground. Ownership, then, is not freedom, it's the ego's attempt to escape death. But the irony is, the more you try to avoid loss, the more you lose yourself. So what if freedom isn't found in claiming, but in releasing? What if power isn't in control, but in trust? Because when you finally stop trying to make the world yours, you begin to see that it was never separate from you. You and the world are made of the same thing, constantly moving, changing, dissolving, and becoming again. And maybe that's the truth behind all this searching. That ownership was never the point. That the goal was never to hold the river, only to learn how to float within it. There comes a point when the mind grows tired of clinging. A quiet exhaustion that no amount of success, affection, or distraction can silence. You start to notice that every attempt to hold life still only tightens the knot. That every time you try to keep something, it begins to slip through your fingers faster. And one day, without meaning to, you stop trying. You surrender, not out of defeat, but out of understanding. That's where freedom begins. Not in gaining more control, but in finally realizing you never had any. Letting go isn't dramatic. It doesn't always look like walking away from everything. Sometimes it's subtler. It's the quiet acceptance that you can love without owning, work without attachment, live without demanding permanence. It's the moment you stop asking life to promise you something, and instead start listening to what it's been trying to show you all along. Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." That space, so small, so often unnoticed, is the birthplace of letting go. It's the gap between wanting to control and choosing to trust. Between reaction and surrender. Most people mistake letting go for losing. But letting go isn't about loss, it's about liberation. It's not the end of care, It's the end of attachment. You still feel love, ambition, hope, but they stop being prisons. They become rivers that flow through you freely. Think of the tree that sheds its leaves every autumn. It doesn't mourn the loss. It knows that clinging would kill it. The letting go is part of its rhythm, part of the cycle that keeps it alive. And yet, we humans fight this same rhythm. We keep trying to hold on, to people, to outcomes, to identities long after they've served their time. We confuse stillness with safety. But life was never meant to stay still. Freedom, in its truest form, is learning to move with the rhythm instead of against it. To breathe through endings. To trust the silence after something beautiful fades. To know that what leaves creates space for what's next. There's an emotional transformation that happens when you truly let go. At first, it feels like falling, like losing the ground beneath you. The ego panics because it measures existence through attachment. But then something unexpected happens. The fall turns into flight. The space that once terrified you becomes vast and peaceful. You realize that without all the things you were holding, you can finally move. When you stop clinging to certainty, curiosity returns. When you stop demanding that people stay, love becomes softer, more honest. When you stop needing to own success, work becomes an act of expression instead of survival. Letting go doesn't mean detachment from life. It means detachment from illusion. You can still build, love, create, but now you do it from freedom, not fear. Alan Watts described this beautifully. He said that life is like music. You don't play it to reach the end, you play it to enjoy the dance of every note. But when we cling, when we try to turn the song into something permanent, we kill its rhythm. We stop dancing and start counting the beats, afraid of when it will end. Letting go is returning to the dance. It's remembering that life was never meant to be owned, only experienced. It's easy to talk about this in theory. But in practice, it's raw. It hurts. Because letting go often begins with loss. The job that ended, the person who left, the version of yourself that no longer fits. The mind fights to hold on to what it knows, because the unknown feels like death. But the irony is that death is exactly what makes life possible. Something in you has to die for something new to be born. The identity built on ownership, the illusion of control, the idea that safety comes from permanence, all of it must dissolve. Only then can you experience the kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstance. When you stop chasing permanence, you start to see beauty in transience. The sunset becomes sacred not because it lasts, but because it ends. Love becomes deeper not because it's guaranteed, but because it's free. Every breath feels miraculous precisely because it could be your last. This is the art of letting go, turning impermanence into gratitude. It doesn't mean apathy. You still care, maybe even more deeply. But your care no longer comes with chains. You no longer say, "Stay, so I can feel whole." You say, "Go if you must, I will still be whole." There's a story in Zen tradition about a monk who carried a beautiful cup. One day he told his students, "For me, this cup is already broken. I drink from it, it holds my tea, I admire its beauty, but when it falls and shatters I say, 'Of course.'" He lived with both appreciation and acceptance. He didn't need permanence to find peace. That's the essence of spiritual freedom. To love deeply while knowing everything you love will one day pass. To give your whole heart without expecting the world to freeze in return. And something miraculous happens when you live this way. Fear loses its grip. Because fear can only exist where there's something to lose. Once you accept that nothing truly belongs to you, fear dissolves. You realize that what you thought was yours, your possessions, your status, your image, was never what gave you worth. Gratitude takes its place. You begin to feel thankful not for what you can keep, but for what you can experience. You start to live as if everything is on loan, as if every encounter, every moment, every breath is a temporary gift. And in that awareness, life becomes luminous. The anxiety that used to haunt you begins to fade, not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer expect it to be. The world no longer owes you permanence. It doesn't need to. You're free. When you finally stop trying to own life, you notice something extraordinary. Life starts flowing through you effortlessly. creativity returns. Joy becomes simpler. Even pain feels different, cleaner, lighter, meaningful. You stop being a collector of moments and become a participant in their unfolding. And maybe that's what all the great teachers were pointing toward, not detachment from the world, but intimacy with it. Because you can't truly see something if you're busy trying to keep it. So you let go, not as a gesture of loss, but as an act of love. You release what you were never meant to hold. You allow life to breathe through you again. And in the quiet after that release, something beautiful emerges. A peace that doesn't depend on anything. A stillness that doesn't need proof. A freedom that can't be taken away. You look at your hands, empty now, and realize they were always meant to be. Because only empty hands can hold everything. You are not what you own. You are what remains when all else falls away. So what does it mean to live freely when nothing truly belongs to you? What does life look like once you've stopped clinging to it? It doesn't mean abandoning everything or living without care. It means seeing life differently, participating without possession. Moving through the world lightly, like a traveler who marvels at every landscape but never tries to build a house on the horizon. When you live this way, even ordinary moments begin to change. You drink your morning coffee without rushing to the next task. You look at the person you love and realize that their presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. You start to treat time as sacred because you finally understand it isn't yours. Every moment you experience is borrowed from eternity. And that realization doesn't bring sadness, it brings reverence. You begin to understand that non-ownership doesn't strip life of meaning, it deepens it. When you stop expecting things to last, you start cherishing them more. A conversation, a sunset, a simple act of kindness, none of it is permanent, and that's what makes it beautiful. This shift transforms relationships too. You no longer try to hold people still in your story. You let them change. You let them go if they must. Love, when freed from possession, becomes spacious. It becomes an act of seeing, not shaping. You stop asking, "How long will you stay?" and instead ask, "How fully can we be here now?" And when it comes to your ambitions, you stop treating them as trophies to display. Success becomes a form of expression, not validation. You work because it fills you with life, not because it defines you. The goal is no longer control, it's contribution. Even your failures stop feeling fatal. When nothing belongs to you, not even success, then failure loses its sting. You learn from it, you grow through it, and you move on. The cycle continues. Life keeps breathing. There's a quiet power in this way of living. You still engage with the world. You still love, create, build, but you do it from a place of flow, not fear. You hold everything with open hands. You let joy and pain both pass through you like waves. You realize that peace doesn't come from building walls. It comes from dissolving them. And over time, the boundaries that once defined mine and not mine begin to blur. You see that the tree outside your window, the stranger you pass on the street, the sky above you, all of it is part of the same living movement you belong to. You stop standing apart from the world and start belonging to it again. You return to that apartment you once walked through with heavy eyes. The same walls, the same things, the same life, but something inside you has shifted. The objects no longer feel like anchors. The silence no longer feels empty. You touch your belongings lightly, knowing they are not extensions of you, but companions for a time. You no longer guard them with fear. You simply appreciate them. You notice that everything you once tried to possess is still here, but now it feels different. It's alive. The room, the air, the light, all moving, all temporary, all perfectly enough. You take a deep breath and realize, nothing belongs to you, and yet everything is yours to experience. To live freely in a world where nothing belongs to you is not to retreat from life, it's to step into it completely. To love without clinging. To work without grasping. To exist without demanding permanence. It is the art of participation without possession. And as you walk forward, lighter than before, the truth settles gently inside you, that you were never meant to own the world. You were meant to witness it, to dance with it for a while, to give and receive, and then to let it all pass through you like wind through open hands. Nothing belongs to you, Not even this moment. But the moment you stop trying to own it, it finally becomes yours.